So what we're going to cover today is really structuring mentoring relationships, expectations, and boundaries. This classically has been a series of presentations, this lecture and the coming one next week, to be given by Dr. Nabulsi, by our colleague at the Brigham, who I have acknowledged here, who is Ellen Seeley, and she used to do them by Skype teleconferencing. Her name is Ellen Seeley. She is the Vice Chair of Faculty Development at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and Director of Clinical Research. She's a colleague I've known for many, many years. And she's made it her pet subject to work on how to improve mentor-mentee relationship. I think it's a fascinating field. I think we keep learning. The model we have followed many years ago is evolving, and I really look forward to your input on this. So the first set of slides will be recognized by the Brigham logo as Dr. Seeley's slide. She had a committee working with her. We have her permission to use them. And then there are a few other things that actually Ms. Andura looked at the literature. I selected a few papers and put in additional slides. These will be posted. What we're going to do, we're going to go over a case. So if possible, I would like you to read the case. I don't have to read it to you. You have the cases, Dr. Rehab. Sorry. And then we're going to discuss it as a group. We used to have all faculty the first 2 times we did it. We had like 20 faculty and we divided in groups. But today we just have a small group, so we'll just do it as an open group discussion. So I would appreciate if you could go over the case. We're going to have 10 minutes, and they are 4 or 5 questions. So if Michael, Hussein, and May can take each one a question, you discuss them. The faculty are wonderful to have, Rehab and Martin, so you will input after they talk, and then we'll see what we have for slides. This is going to be fun. Okay? So you can go over the case. Everybody has a case, right?
Yes.
All right. And we're going to do 10 minutes for the case. You're going to kind of have a little bit of a consultation between each other. إذا بدك رحاب تاني حد Martin, it would be great. So it would be faculty and students. And I've seen the slides, so I'm not going to participate, but I look forward to what you have to say, actually, because you've experienced mentee, and now you're mentors.
questions. The questions.
Sorry. Okay, if you can take each one, and then you can decide who takes the fourth. I'm sorry.
We should choose between 1, 2, and 3.
No, each one of you should take one, but you can discuss them together. Just so there is one person talking, you can input, and then whoever wants to take the fourth, maybe we'll have the faculty take the fourth. It's a division head. How about that? That would be more fun, okay? All right, great. So you'll take each one, and Dr. Nasser and Dr. Martin will take the fourth. And if you can underline the key term in the history that are helping you address the questions, I think it would be key. I'm ready whenever you are. Shall we launch? Okay, so I think this is a very interesting case. And by the way, it is a lesson learned, not only by reading the case, but also we've all lived and learned to improve our relationship, whether as mentee or mentors. So you've all read the case. I'm not going to reread it for redundancy, but we can underscore the key points. So what went wrong in the management of the mentor-mentee relationship? Who's going to take this?
I'll take the first question. So several points from Chris and from Jonathan's perspective. There were several weak points in the mentor-mentee relationship. So the first one is that Chris' research topic and ideas were outside the topics and methods of, outside the area of focus of Jonathan's
Expertise.
The second was that Jonathan was not really helping Chris to overcome his challenges, which made Chris schedule less meetings with Jonathan, and so this made the relationship fade away and weakened more the relationship. And the third was that Chris did not know how to create a structured and strong support with his project, which, because it was based largely outside the division, so this also Jonathan was unable to help with this. And from Jonathan's perspective, since he was not very familiar with the research topic of Chris, he had limited information and help to contribute. And another thing is that he did not contact him. He was not proactive, so he did not contact Chris to schedule more interview to see where was his problems, and or maybe he should get him another a second mentee to help him who's
mentor,
more specialized,
second mentor
to help him who is more specialized in the area. So he did not take this proactive
Okay,
action.
so I heard keywords. I heard lack of structure,
Yeah.
differences in research interests, so not lack of alignment of mentor-mentee area of expertise. But you know, in the first paragraph, Helen told that there is a faculty member who could serve that role. So as far as the division head is concerned, it is Jonathan who is the mentor. And soon after, an opportunity arose for Chris to develop an area in his research interest, collaborating someone outside the division. Jonathan encouraged him. And he said, I would continue to be your mentor. So there is something, I mean, what went wrong here is there is a dynamic process, right? Identifying a mentor is dynamic. And early on, it may look like I could be the greatest mentor for student A, but as the project evolves and the area of interest becomes honed in, it turns out I'm not. And so I think there are a few things here. The more medicine and any science becomes specialized, the more it's likely that you will need a network, not just a mentor and a mentee. And I think networks is something that you'll remember from this, clearly. But so Khail has pointed out few issues that went wrong. Anybody wants to add what went wrong? So lack of structure, lack of alignment of expertise, and you also outline that the mentor was not assertive enough in following up with the mentee, but also the mentee didn't follow up with the mentor, and we're going to talk about that. So anything else you can find that's wrong in this mentor-mentee relationship? إذا students ما عندهم شيء دكتورة زبيتي عندها شيء. Okay, Iman.
So definitely what you said, it has to happen. The relationship is a responsibility of both ends, of both parties involved, because the mentee, this is his future career, everything. So you have to make sure things are going well. And the mentor also has the responsibility to make sure that the meetings are still happening on schedule and so on, and there should be like outcome measures to follow on the process. I don't think this was addressed anywhere. Like this is one thing. There should be like a timeline, expected pace, and when things don't go well, we have to stop, appraise, and so on.
Perfect.
So
Wonderful.
And the other thing is, I think because he's a mid-level faculty, and he was assigned this task from his boss, he felt like he has to continue to the end. And this is also not. It's not like blaming him, but here there is also better judgment should be done here, and he has to find. Jonathan has to find a way out, because he's obviously not the perfect person. He can stay in the network of mentorship and, let's say, keep the task that was assigned to him, but he has to advise his mentee to actively search for someone else.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I was also thinking the idea that maybe 1 year to evaluate the relationship is too long, because it's dynamic, and then setting maybe more reasonable,
Okay.
like maybe after missing the first 2 meetings, maybe it's an alarm
Okay.
to measure.
Okay, great.
And I can say from personal experience that we had our experience with the thesis development, and it's definitely like you don't schedule meetings because you are busy, or people schedules don't match together, and then you say it's okay, whatever, but no. And I really have to give a lot of credit to Dr. Fleihan. Like when I was behind on schedule my meetings, I just get an email. These are the available dates. What day suits you?
And yeah. So, but anybody else could have had more responsibility in what went wrong. I have a couple more I can think about. I mean, I've been thinking about this case a lot, obviously.
More problems, you mean?
Or the responsibility of a third party here.
The chair.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the chair, the division head has an authority. So she assigned this junior faculty. So he felt he couldn't say no. And maybe he enjoys mentoring because he's successfully mentored before. So he took this on. But I think a division head, once you assign 2 new people together, it's important. It falls on your responsibility to make sure it's working right. So I think that's number 1. Number 2, the last paragraph is Chris and Jonathan were required at the end of the year to fill this form. They had no idea there was this form. So I think expectation, structure, timetable, it all falls into this kind of evolution of things. If she told them, okay, you're going to try to work together, I'm here to back you up or help you, this is something you have to fill, and I want you to put a structure and a framework for this relationship. And so none of that was done. I have to tell you, after, I'm not going to say how many years of being a mentee and a mentor, we actually, for the SHARP, you guys have this. We've developed a booklet that all of you MS students have signed. Iman, you may not have gotten it. It's after you actually graduated, but you're welcome to each get a copy. And there is the advisor responsibility, the main thesis advisor, the student's responsibility, and the thesis committee's responsibilities. And as Iman said, Dr. Spade said, it's a bilateral process. So, but it's important to be clear from the outset whose responsibility is what. So it's the mentee's responsibility to chase the advisor and the committee thesis. It's the mentee's responsibilities to send updates and progress report. It's the mentor's responsibility to find out if there's a problem, do I need to get expertise from outside, but to keep overseeing, not to let it drag. So all this kind of, and I really think Helen, as a division head, fell short of her responsibilities. So there are things that are really not well, and I think it's very important, I'm sorry, to know what the specific contribution of each member of that network is. You can have, I think it always is helpful to have one main mentor and other secondary mentors. But sometimes the thesis is so complicated that you need 2 primary mentors. Fine. But it's also important to know what's expected from each and what each one is going to do and how the trainee is going to get that together. And Iman said something very true. It's very difficult to get all members together. True. So there is a lot of one-on-one between the mentee and the other mentors. But I think it's crucial, and we say as needed in this, that the thesis committee members and mentee meet at least periodically together, because there is nothing that actually beats the conversation of issues and problems and how to tackle them. I may have a view that's this way. Hani may have a view that's this way. And Dr. Shamsuddin may have a view that, but when we sit together, it's a much better. This is why she has 3 people on the committee. One is a statistician, another one is whatever, women's health, the third one is a cancer, and she's a surgeon. So this is why you have more than one person, but each individual contribution is very important. So I think this pretty much illustrates this. So whose whose responsibility is it to maximize the success?
I would take it. So in my opinion, it's a shared responsibility because, as we have seen, Jonathan had assumed that things were going well with Chris. The lack of communication between the two and the lack of feedback from Chris. So when he scheduled last meetings, he thought that things were going well with the new mentor. So Chris should have communicated his concerns with his mentor so that he can point him toward other mentors who can help him in the areas in which he is struggling. That's one. So and before beginning all this, interests and expectations should be communicated between the two. So Chris should have stated what his interests are, so that Jonathan could help him more, or at least tell him that I'm not the right person for you. That's from the mentee point of view. The mentor also should follow up, as Dr. Iman said, should follow up more closely and assess the progress more closely. And then, if he thinks that he is falling short on the support, he should point him toward other faculty members who can help.
Okay, so do you want to add anything?
Maybe Chris should have met with Helen and took her advice along all the journey he was in.
Okay, so timetable came up. So early on, when Chris was assigned to Jonathan, there was no clear research project, right? And then as you read the paragraph, you found out that soon an opportunity arose for Chris to develop a research progress in his area of interest, collaborating with someone else. So he communicated with Jonathan, who encouraged him and offered him to continue as Chris' mentor. I think this is a major problem because he didn't exactly go over what that project is. He offered to continue as a mentor, not knowing whether he should be the primary mentor because he doesn't have the expertise, he doesn't have the knowledge. I didn't see anywhere that it's clear. So this is what I meant by dynamic. Yani, first of all, once you nail the project, then it becomes clear who's your primary mentor, because the primary mentor should be the one who has the most input, or the two primary input. But just saying, I'm going to be continuing as your mentor, maybe he felt coerced because he's a junior faculty and the division head told him that she has to do that, but he should have opened up to the division head too. He should have gone up. First of all, find out what he can contribute to Jonathan's, to Chris's project, but also gone to the division head and said, I have a problem. His project is completely outside. We need to meet and decide what's the way for this mentee, for a good mentor-mentee. My contribution would be general advice. My contribution would be, there is a lot of mentoring that's beyond the science, right? And we can talk about that. There is organization, there is interaction, there is advice how to interact with others, how to approach conflicts. Doesn't have to be life coaching, although we'll get to that in Ellen's notes. So I think that's very, very important. Okay, anything else we need to add on this one?
I just also believe that it shouldn't be only primary mentors, so it can be like a committee of mentors, because they need to tackle not only research development, personal development. So probably he could have worked as a person for personal development as a great mentor, but not for...
Right, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Maybe he would have contributed as how to approach challenges. He's mentored successfully other people, how to resolve conflicts, where to get help. He's more senior than Chris. He could tell him where the expertise he needs could have been. He could have reached out for the... So he could have, but he should have defined his role. If I stay on as a mentor, am I primary, am I secondary, what's my role? So definition of absolutely. And more often than not, you will find that there's going to be a need for more than one primary mentor. And that's why there is a committee, right? But responsibility should be clear. Okay.
I think also, although the concept of mentorship has been long ago, but it's just more recently that people are talking about it in a formal way and trying to put structure to it. So I think here or even in the US, it's still a new
It's an
concept.
evolving, absolutely.
So people people, maybe Jonathan never thought of the concept of having other mentors, and maybe he didn't want to, as we said, to leave the task that was assigned to him. So I think educating senior people, mid-level people, and juniors about all these dynamics of mentorship is important for the success of any mentorship relationship.
And that's exactly why this was developed at the Brigham. It wasn't just for mentee, it was for mentor, future mentor, junior faculty. It's actually faculty development. And you know, I wish more people in our, I think what we talk in Sharp, and Martin, you'll get to realize that, and Rihab knows that, and Iman knows that, is we are an academic institution. We are trying to promote master in clinical science, clinical research. What we are aching the most for are commitment of mentors, time of mentors to commit to give the advice and the input to mentees, and this is very precious. You cannot say, I'm going to give master and PhD thesis with clinical people in clinical research unless you have that clear commitment, and that's all laid out up front. And that's something we ache for here. We lack time commitment. Our clinicians are very busy. They may be very knowledgeable. They may have a lot of rich things to bring, but they have not been able, and we're experiencing it over and over again. And at least at AUB, I didn't see it happen anywhere else. It's a slightly more laid-back role. In addition to the mentor-mentee responsibilities, we have an academic advisor, which is me, Lucky, keeping after. Even if I'm not on your committee, I would keep saying, where are you? What happened? Every 3 months I want to meet. What's the update? You know, because
that's
yeah,
an important.
yeah. So there is, and this is, by the way, AUB specific, which I think is great. In one way, you can say it's too controlling, it's too spoon feeding. But AUB master's students have an academic advisor who's there to make sure they're okay, that things are on track, and then there is the actual thesis committee and advisor and etc.
I don't know if you already know this. In our department, we recently established, this is Elisha, our chairman, he recently established mentoring committee for junior faculty, where for assistant associate, it's mandatory for the assistant, but for associate they decide.
So what does the committee actually do? No, I didn't know.
This is new. We just started this year. Well, I wanted to have a mentoring committee, so we just like once where I presented my achievement post my promotion, but not yet great interaction between the mentoring committee and me. So this is hopefully for the next.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Career advice.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you something very funny, actually. It came to my mind because I had a wonderful mentor in the lab when I was doing my basic years with Ed Brown, who cloned the receptor. And he was always there. He's the most knowledgeable person. Maybe lab work is a bit more straightforward. All I need is his expertise. He was always there for me. And then I transitioned to clinical translational. Ed was always in the background to give me general advice, but I didn't really have a mentor. I developed into a trialist, learning the job, looking at role models, looking at senior people within and outside the institution. And one day we're sitting at the dinner table with all the women endocrinologists at an endocrine meeting from the Brigham, and I was saying, you know, who are your mentors? And everybody laughed. They said, we're mentoring each other. Now, this is peer mentoring. That's as important, by the way. We didn't bring it up here. But, you know, Chris talking to people who are at his level about challenges, opportunities, may be an eye-opener about how to resolve some issues. So, and I really, you know, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's more fun than looking at slides. The mentor-mentee relationship was a vertical relationship in the past. It was the mentor, you know, the god of science, and the mentee who's learning. But now it's a network at all levels. So there is vertical, there is horizontal, there is even, you know, down. I mean, I think, and it's bilateral. I mean, I learn a lot. I've learned a lot from doing what I do, from junior faculty. I've learned a lot from Marlene, who did her thesis with me. Dr. Ael says, I've learned so much from Marlene when she was challenged by methodology for her thesis analyses. So it's a bilateral relationship everywhere, and it's a multi-level relationship. Okay, so I think we've covered, who is going to cover what might Chris and Jonathan have done differently? Do you want to add anything? Because we kind of covered them. There is a relationship between, you can add.
Maybe, maybe Chris Jonathan should have came to the meeting, actively be present with the statistician and Chris, and maybe Helen should have joined at any
Yeah. So if Chris was going to if Jonathan was still going to be the mentor, he should have alerted the mentee. And this is, by the way, the Brigham now has a contract that the mentor and mentee have a look at. The mentee signs it. It's very nice. We actually got inspired by them, and you'll see this. But I think it's very important. So expectation at the outset, frequency of meeting. If something goes wrong, who's going to address it? And again, as I said before, each mentor should know exactly what he or she is expected to do. You know, I'm going to give you whatever advice. He's going to give you advice on the science. She's going to give you the statistical advice. So absolutely. And then we also covered what Helen should have done, right? Because she assigned. She didn't, and oh, by the way, how do you find a mentor? Because we gave to Met students 7 years ago. They asked for a lecture about students engaging in research at the Met 2 students, because they have SCORI and they have LEMSIC and all these. And they asked me, how do you choose a good mentor? And that's something, so here the students are being proactive about choosing their mentor. And I think how the mentor gets chosen could be any one of several ways, right? The division head, you come to the division head, you say, I don't know who my mentor should be, and the division head does it. But then they should be a follow-up. Or you could say, which I did, oh, I love calcium sensing, I want to do calcium sensing. I went to Ed, I said, I want to work with you in your lab, can you take me on? So that was the mentee asking the mentor, and he accepted. But it could be anything. It could be a peer suggesting to you. It could be a junior faculty reaching out who needed help in his lab, reaching out to a mentee. So it could come from any source. Okay. Anything else we want to add on this question slides?
I would like to add something.
Yes.
That in my experience, when I was doing my PhD at McGill, my thesis myself was co-supervised. So because I think that now we are at a point in research where there needs to, like, everything is almost interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and slowly as the years progressed, all the theses became in my department co-supervised, because not one person can make the whole role. I think that co-supervision is enriching, but it's also confusing, because then you can be like, oh, the other supervisor will take care of this. I think this is a bit what Jonathan's attitude was, like, oh, now there's a statistician involved. I'm here for general support. So, and I think this is why it's important to meet regularly as a team, to keep the spirit of the network and to keep that each one is a piece of the puzzle. So not one like
and to know from the outset what are the contributions from each, what are the expectations of the mentee from the mentor, what are the expectations of the mentor from the mentee, not only on a one-by-one, like dual, bilateral, but also on a team basis. And this is what, it's all about, absolutely. So I think this is great. Okay, so this is now going to be just general, and like any other relationship, the two parties need to introduce themselves. So this is actually general advice from the faculty development on how a mentor and mentee should start their relationship. So this is what they suggest there, and I think it's interesting. So once a mentor or mentee think they're going to embark on a relationship, it would be nice for the mentor to be working as a model. So giving his experience about professional, or hers, experience as professional career, what she does now, how she got to the current position, including school, training path, faculty roles, leading to the present. How did I get there? Some people tell me, why are you doing what you're doing? And I go back and I say, I was passionate by this when I was a student, and I give a quick blips, and the challenges, and the opportunities, and the expectations, and everything. I think it's a nice background. And then you don't have to, as mentor, tell about how this fits your life. I usually give a very brief blips. People have a sense that I'm trying to balance something. And it's not always easy. And you guys will have to try to balance something, whether you're a male or a female, whether it's work to make a living or academic career to meet your research and academic expectation. And this may help. You sometimes just show how you did it. It may not be the best way, but you actually could forewarn. This second bullet may or may not have to be shared. And then I think it's important for the mentor to ask the mentee about the career of that mentee so far. What are their expectation, aspiration? When somebody comes to me, now students come to me by tons. I hate to turn them off, but sometimes I do, because I don't have the time to mentor them appropriately. And I think that's part of being a good mentor, is being able to commit the time. And if I'm not, I should not take them on for the selfish goal of having somebody enter my data or double check my data. Seriously, I think it should be mutually enriching for it to be experienced as a fruitful situation. When students come to me say, I want to do research, I say, well, what do you expect from this research experience with me? What's your timeline? What do you want to learn? What do you think you want to get out of it? If they tell me I want a publication, I mean, you have to be guiding them in whether their expectations can be met with what they have in mind. So if somebody tells me I have a month of elective and I want to get a publication on my CV to apply and improve my application to the States, I say, forget it. You're never going to get it. And that's my responsibility. Another thing a good mentor should do is not promise the mentee that he or she will get a publication and then put them on a project that takes 2 years to develop. And I tell them, I say, you could help in a project that will take time. I always give them credit. Their name is on the paper. But if you want publication, you need to find, and that's part of being a good mentor, finding a project that's feasible and implementable to be completed in the timeline that you commit to the lab so that you get your publication. So I think this is very important. Okay, so what are the expectations of the mentee? Roles and responsibilities, we touched on that. I mean, I'm not going to read them slide by slide. They're going to be posted, but we talked about general advice, specific technical advice, sponsorship, in an academic institution, or in guidance about career option. As a mentee, you should ask the mentor what he or she can provide you to be successful. And as a mentor, ask to plan out the issues that need to be discussed at each meeting. And I always like, when I sit with either people that I'm advising directly or as an academic advisor, I say, send to the committee minutes of your last meeting, timetable, action plan. Everybody knows what to expect. And I hate a meeting that is not followed by a formal email that captures the minute and the action plan and who's doing what. Because then, ضاعت الطاسة, as you just said. Who's doing what? Okay? So plan out the issue before the next meeting. So you tell them, we're going to meet every month. You tell me before the meeting what you expect to do. What are you going to present? What's the meeting agenda? Bring the agenda with you. Provide and discuss example when possible relevant to the mentee's work. For example, if a mentee is doing a project on, silk scaffolding, Rihab, you come across a paper, you bring it to your mentee and you say, here's an interesting paper relevant to your work. Let's discuss it. Let's see what the issue, how can we learn from it? This really is very fruitful. No, I'm a team member. We have a great team, but I'm not bragging. I'm really saying this is what it works. I seek out to people. I was in the States. Cliff gave me, Michaela, brought my attention to a scientific paper. I said, great, send it to us, distribute it to the team. This is how we evolve. We cannot be each one in our own corner capturing all the science. This is the enriching part of a network. Okay? And then keep in mind as a mentor that you need at some time to let go. And I wish Marlene was here because I don't like to talk about somebody when they're not here. But when Marlene was my mentee and she finished her thesis, she slowly transitioned to being independent. And it's a very tricky and fine line situation because she would ask me, I lost it, right? I'm getting too much into this. So what she would ask me is career advice, right? But she also needs to find her niche on her own. And my career advice may have conflict of interest because I may bring her advice that is aligned with my interests. But she has to start transitioning to something that is also partially independent to show she's an independent investigator. And I always would preface it like I'm giving my conflict of interest statement. You got my advice. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I really would like you to go talk to Dr. Ael or Dr. Habib and see what they have to say. Because I'm always concerned that I'm advising her in a way that may directly or indirectly fulfill my research interests. And transition is a very, very critical thing. For example, I was assistant professor at the Brigham. And bit by bit, Ed gave me space because I moved in the clinical field. But I always went back to him for good advice. Although he was not the clinical person, he always was very present there. But by the time you get to be associate, I think, personally, an assistant professor cannot be independent. And I stand to be corrected. I really think it's too early to cut the umbilical cord at the assistant professor or instructor. I think there should be a gradual transition. Letting go, but saying, okay, you're an instructor now, you're a young faculty, you need to find your niche, isolate yourself completely from your mentor is the worst advice anybody can get. Because this is not a kapsitzer, this is not an all or none. And people at our institution sometimes think or have been given such advice. I think it's transition, I think it's a comfort zone. Some people will transition earlier than others. So there is no perfect timing. By the time they're associate professors, they should be pretty much be most of the time on their own. But you're going to find that the most productive research team in the States, and you can talk to that, people who have been outside, are the ones where there is multiple investigators. Each one has his or her area of interest, but they cross-pollinate and enrich each other. So they're not completely independent because it's synergy. It's not additive, it's synergizing. Trying to do everything on your own would be very tedious and very difficult. So it's a transitioning and letting go that, okay, structured expectation, practical details, frequency, time, we covered that, format of the meeting, how many times is it going to be in person, how many times it's going to be by email, how many times it's going to be by phone. I have one example that I faced recently where I'm not on the committee, I'm the academic advisor, and I found out that they never met in person as mentor-mentee. There was never an email for the committee. I think this has failed. Although I have advised everybody in writing about what the expectations are, but I cannot be the police. So it's kind of, you don't want to be too, as an academic advisor, by the way, but as a mentor, you have to follow up. If the mentee should follow up, but if he or she doesn't, the mentor should make sure there is a follow-up. Otherwise, it's failure. 1 year later, they found out, not too late, and there is individual variation in time. But I think when you tell them this is your pet project, this is your little project, this gives them accountability, this gives them initiative, and I think it enhances creativity, to be honest with you. If I have a preset idea of what I want the students to do, it's not very creative because I'm sitting in my calcium vitamin D wall, clinical research, women's health, and I'm not thinking outside the box. Med students sometimes bring questions that I never thought about. So I say, okay, I have these data sets. Have a look at them. Have a look at the protocol. Brainstorm about it. Bring 1 or 2 research questions. I think this really, if they have developed the maturity and the curiosity, they can bring to the table very challenging, provocative, and actually enriching ideas. Give them the stage. I really think it's very important, depending on where in their career, to encourage them to present the work. Present the work at lab meeting, conferences, rehearsals, urge them to apply for fellowship, awards, and to develop presentation skill. And I think rehearsal is key. You know, sit with them, listen to how they're presenting, fine-tune their slides, tell them what questions think about what questions they may have. I will never forget at the Brigham, they would be assistant, associate professor, or even professor, having big plenary presentation. We would sit in the conference room, they would present, faculty member would be sitting there and making suggestions on how to improve the presentation, what challenging questions they may get, so they can think ahead, they can be prepared. So don't just say, prepare an abstract and then I'll see you at the meeting. Mazboot? Mentorship is a developmental relationship. I love that. That changes as the relationship evolves. Okay, it's dynamic. There are 2 broad categories of mentorship, the traditional and the transformational. And the traditional is one that's in an institution, right? There's a structure, there's a support system, and it could be directional, it could be vertical, horizontal, it could be multi-level. But there is also, in each of those areas, by the way, the transformational is the one that is post hoc, ad hoc. And I develop a mentor, mentee, and maybe secondary mentor, little committee. And then I find I have a need. And I go and address that need. Well, I need to assess, is that going to be ad hoc once? Or is that person going to be so needed that she or he needs to be on the committee? So transformational needs, what they mean in this paper, is that it's a one advice that needs to be fed back to the committee, for example. Or it can evolve into becoming a committee member. Okay? It could be formal or informal. It could be a spot, techie. It could be peer mentorship, as we discussed. It could be your own peers mentoring. Hussein telling me, you know what, my experience at AUB has been this with Sharp. I think what you should do is that. It could be. It's very important. So anyway, this is road successful trip tips. This is again ASCO. So for you oncologists, establish an open communication system with reciprocal feedback. Set the standards, the goal, the expectation. Establish trust. Care for and enjoy each other. Allow for mistakes. Participate willingly. I think one of the problem is that Jonathan was told he's going to be a mentor. He did not offer. He felt coerced, and that's not, I mean, he could have said no, but maybe he felt he couldn't say no. So it has to be a willing, it has to be a forthcoming relationship, develop flexibility and demonstrate it, consider constraint to mentoring. And again, when you commit to be a mentor, it's very nice to be a mentor and have 10 mentees. Do you have the time? Do you have the responsibility? And are you going to give them what they expect from you? Learn from others. We keep learning. We're still learning many years after. Work on common tasks. Be open and comfortable. Most often, one mentor serves as a primary mentor while one or more other play a supportive role. In most cases, an awardee's primary mentor is co-located in the same institution. Primary mentors usually are best if they are in your same institution, even in proximity. We're going to see some slides. Yani, your mentor is not lower campus and you're here, because that by itself may become an inhibitor. But if it's outside your institution, it's your primary mentor, it's asking for trouble. Okay, but co-located is very important. Fewer secondary members are co-located. Secondary members can be abroad, can be far, can be consultants, can be co-investigators. They are going to be less reachable. They have busy lives. So you are always better off having your primary mentor within your institution. Most recently funded career development awards have more mentors. This is true, as we heard here from Rihab, I think Iman and maybe Martin, more than one mentor is needed because science is becoming complex. This is similar to the interview I gave you. This is Career Development Award in Health Services Career, but I want to tell you, this is a survey of 133 awardees. This is another actual scientific paper. 84% participated, and the awardees reported on the structure of the mentoring relationship with their two most influential mentors. On the average, they had anywhere a mentoring team of 1 to 5 mentors, but on the average in this study, which was all people who received awards between 2000 to 12, so the last decade, previous decade, 2.7 mentors per mentee. So not a single mentor. Now, what's the structure? I don't know if you see this very well, but they will be posted. Primary mentor only 6.8%. 2 primary mentors, 17%. A primary mentor with a secondary mentoring team, 70%. So again, it illustrates the networking. Number of mentors, as we said, on the average, 2.7. Number of primary mentors exceeding 1. It was 1.2. So for most, it was 1, but some of them were 2 primary mentors. You can have 2 co-primary mentors. Geographic proximity, very close. Close enough for impromptu contact. Yani me knocking on the door of my mentor and saying, I have a question, can I talk to you? 65%. Close, same building, 19%. Same area, less than 2 hours travel time, 7%. Different geographic area, 7.5%. This is the successful ones. Okay, the secondary mentor, very close, 42%, so less than the primary. Within the same campus, 22%. Less than 2 hours away, 12.8%. Different area, 14%. Formation of mentoring relationship. Input into primary mentor selection. This is an N. This is no more. This is a mean. On the average, this is a scale of 1 to 5. 1 to 5. 4.5 had input into the selection of their 4.5 out of 5, which is very strong. Secondary mentor, 4.6. Primary mentor actively, so how is the mentee involved in the selection of the mentor? Actively involved in selecting the mentor, 64%. Both jointly involved, يعني mentor والmentee اتفقوا سوا, 39%. And already working with one or more other mentors, 63%. All this is trying to tell you is it's a very multidimensional. It's not a one-on-one anymore. خلاص, it doesn't work. This old system doesn't work anymore. Mentoring changes. Look at the middle part of that. Change mentors during the Career Development Award, 23%. Yani 1 out of 4 almost had to change. This is the dynamic process. It doesn't work, you have to change. Change primary mentor, 11%. Change secondary mentor, 14%. Reason the changing for mentors, mentor retired, 15%. Second most common reason, the Career Development Award moved, yani the mentee moved to another institution while still on the Career Award. The third most common is changing research focus. And I think it's very important to try to nail down the research focus and the importance of the expertise needed early on. You hate to have to change your mentoring network, right? Because you invest a lot into developing the timeline, the expectation, everything. You are much better off developing that early on. I'm not going to read this because I think it becomes redundant, but it's going to be posted. So these are what we have in our booklet, which all the master students receive. We actually realized after a couple of tough experiences with thesis students that we need to have not only the mentee see it and sign on it, but probably the mentor see it and at least sign that they read it and they're aware of their responsibilities. So we have the student's responsibility, the thesis advisor responsibilities, and then we have the academic advisor here that shouldn't put in responsibilities. So I want to open it for input, for wisdom, for things that were not brought up before we close.
Thank you for detailing this very important subject that we don't think about, and it's not given enough importance. Though if you think about it, nothing really in life works if you just leave it to chaos. Things have to be put in order, and that's why you need to have all these things, timelines, enough expertise on board. You need to really understand all this relationship, set expectations, everything. So it's really important. I don't know, maybe there should, but the culture is not set well enough. Even abroad, it was not very well set. It's there, but you know. So I don't know, maybe you would plan for a Ramadan, something like that. I think it's really the time for that, because especially in a clinical setting, you need mentorship, and furthermore in academic and research, because most of us, we do not really get enough mentorship for research, because the way we train and the way we start practicing, it's all focused on getting clinical skills, clinical knowledge. Research just, is an adjunct. So I don't know, I think it's really worth exploring.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
I never thought of Grand Rounds, but I'll tell you what they do at the Brigham, which I found fascinating, is they do once a month a lunch session where faculty and mentees have brainstorm. Somebody brings their own experience, they talk about it, or they can have pre-selected topics or cases like the one they have. By the way, Dr. Seeley has shared with us a very rich, slide set and also resources. So what I showed you is only the tip of the iceberg, trying to cover a little bit the main issues at hand. So what they do is they do once a month or once every 2 months at the Brigham, young senior faculty and mentees, and either there is a case or there are issues or problem, and they always are reassessing how to improve things. Interesting. Grand Rounds would be interesting. The problem is, I think you need to be talking to the audience that needs to hear this. I think mostly, you know how we have posted on the website, who are the people doing research? Who are the people having databases? I think we need to identify these people who are interested in doing research and at least have the senior faculty. I agree with you. I mean, I am still learning today how to improve what we're doing. From you, from reading, from interacting, from learning, from whatever. I think our senior, junior, all faculty ranges, you're absolutely right, Iman, should be aware of that. Maybe a grand round is a way to start. I'm not sure what the best way is. Maybe we'll send a survey, see what the interest is, but I really think it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, especially if you say we are an academic institution, really interested in productive research.
Yeah.
And a nice thing I always remember, like when I was at Hopkins, the chairperson for surgery was Julie Frashlab. So she used to meet with fellows like every 2 months or so, and I remember I asked her, so what? I was thinking more that she's a woman who's one of the very few chairs in a big institution. So what challenges do you have as a chairperson? And the first thing she thought about, I was asking about other stuff. She said it's so difficult to find mentors anymore, because like most of the people, she is more senior to them, and even so, people are afraid to give her advice. So I thought she tries to reach out to them or whatever, and tries to give them, the comfort zone to talk, because like everybody has their own expertise to share. So it was, it stuck in my mind. Like she thought her main problem, she can't find a mentor anymore.
Yeah. But I think same level mentorship is as important as the, more senior to us. because at some point in your career, you become one of the most senior people, but that doesn't mean you know it all. And I think you have a lot to learn from your peers, but also from the senior. I mean, so there is this woman at UCSF who's a wonderful basic science bone researcher who was a few years ahead of me at the Brigham as a fellow. I never knew her as a fellow. I actually got to know her when I developed into a junior faculty. She is my role model. She's wonderful. She's full professor at UCSF for the last 15 years. And I joke and I say, you know, you're a wonderful role model. She jokes, she goes, what are you talking about? You are, so it's always in all directions, Yani. And for me, she was like, oh my God, she got to be professor. She has 2 R1s. Da, da, da. She goes, no. How do you do it in the Middle East, you with all these challenges? So there is always a bilateral. And there is always enrichment in being obtained from colleagues. But let's have the student's perspective. Be frank.
I think that we should have like workshops or training for the mentorship for both the mentees and the mentors. Right?
You know, at NIH, every year, no matter how high up, you can be the chief of NIH, you have to go to a 1-week workshop about being a mentor. Because, you know, it's the new challenges, it's about having multiple collaborations in and out. I think that, you know, I remember seeing my supervisor go off for a whole week. They are being trained in being mentors because it's a delicate, like, I think it's really a training that never, ends. I know that at McGill they had it too. I don't know if it was structured like on a yearly, like, but we knew whenever they went to the Baltimore campus.
Yeah,
that
that's
this is-
interesting about the NIH.
Yeah.
Do they have any resources, Martine? Do you know?
I will look.
That would be great if you can share them with Rima and we can post them on the website. But I agree with you. I agree with you because we're aching for this. We're finding difficulties in having people allocate time and resources to their mentees. The people who do that more easily are the non-clinical people, of course, right? So if you go to FHS and you have the PhDs and they have master students and they're their advisor, it is a smoother process because they're not torn with clinical responsibilities. But yet, still, I think if people clinical are going to say, I'm going to be on your committee, they have to commit to time and input.
But also, if I can give you advice, because I'm junior, so I recently lived this. I feel that because the peer network is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Because we discover things as we go along. I did not know the challenges. I did not know the first time 2 meetings and a role fell through. But then you hear your friend, peer, saying, "Oh no, I'm pushing, I'm writing, I'm making them like meet with." Like you get inspired. That,
Yes.
"Oh, okay, maybe my approach is passive. Maybe
Yeah.
okay, maybe." this
Absolutely.
is-
Peer mentoring is key. As I told you, we're having dinner. I said, who's your mentor? They laughed. They said, we co-mentor each other. It's true. We share problems about life, about career, about grants, about promotion, about whatever you want to talk about. And it's really fun. And the Sharp Master Student, the summer certificate are fun because they get to know each other so well. I mean, they're not at the stage where they're finding a project, but they become a community. And by the way, they help each other make it through the summer. Same thing with people doing master thesis. You are a small number, right? You're only 3 doing really clinical research. But the basic research ones are more in touch with each other, I think. I don't know, Rehab is gone. You know,
But definitely, we
Yeah.
bonded a lot.
yeah. And that's advice about how to face the challenges. So I think peer mentoring is underestimated and is very valuable. I
We
agree.
had writing groups, so like whoever is writing fast, like to be motivating. So if someone's writing their thesis fast, we get on schedule with them to try and write weekly, monthly. We had stats groups, we had crying sessions, like we had all type. And I think it's really.
Yeah.
And what's nice is that it's the same people who advance at the same level as you, so you can still ask them for advice even when you graduate. Yeah, because. It's like
And the last thing I want to say to students, that I always say I sound like a broken record, and I say it to myself because I still live it. You guys always underestimate the time needed to finish a task such as a master's thesis. You think, I have a month, I'll nail it. And actually, one of the things we do, Dr. Sbeiti knows very well, is we tell them once you've nailed the topic and you've defended your proposal and it's accepted by your committees and it passes the graduate study committee approval rate, you have to put a timeline from now, and we help you do that, from now till a year from now. And you tell me, I want to defend in a year, I work backwards and I tell you, your introduction should be done by this time, should be sent to your committee. Your message should be done by this time, should be sent to your committee. Your results should be done by your time, and your thesis discussion should be done by your time, by this time, which is a month before your actual defense, because you only have 2 weeks to put it in the library by EUB regulation. And everybody infallibly thinks they can do it. And I start with people who are purely, not like you, burdened by clinical responsibilities. I start with people who are purely dedicated to research, who thought they could finish and had to delay by 1 or 2 semesters because they couldn't finish. And the last thing I want to say is, although my lesson from SHARP is, although we got approved by the Ministry of Education to have a SHARP 1 year and a SHARP 2 years, I think the SHARP 1 year is almost impossible. I think it's, no, it is impossible unless you are 100% doing nothing but SHARP, no clinical responsibilities and no interviews and nothing done outside. Otherwise, it's impossible. And we're actually considering, we've made it an option. The Ministry of Education said the only people who can graduate with an MS SHARP within a year are MDs, because they're already stronger at the basis. But I can tell you, we're going on SHARP 6. Not a single one could finish in 1 year. So always think 1.5 to 2 times the time you think you need to finish something. شو ما كان paper, كان analysis, كان abstract, whatever it is. When you want polished, good quality projects, it takes much longer than what your assessment is. And you don't even take into consideration the unexpected, right? Iman, they call you, tomorrow you have to cover. She thought she had her whole day. Or a patient gets very sick. Or, by the way, a family member gets very sick and everything gets backlogged. This is life. So always give it 1.5 to 2 times. Anjad, this is advice that is so important. It sounds so obvious, but it's so important.
Actually, when I spoke with them about the thesis progress, this is what these words, what I said, like you have life events that you don't
control. And this is as important as your thesis. You being there for your family, you're being there for your patient, you're being there for your clinical responsibility. These are part of your priorities. And by the way, I think a good mentor is the mentor who can try the best he can to be realistic about challenges of life and balancing career life issues. Some people love it when they all do his work, but most of us here are trying to balance careers and do it relatively well, but there are constraints. Anyway, thank you so much. This will be posted. There is one thing I want you to do. Next week, Dr. Nabulsi is going to give an interesting networking, more detail, which is hands-on. Pick one action that, reflecting on today's talk, that you will take or think about next week to better clarify the structure of one of your mentoring relationships. Just pick one. And if you're going to be with us next week, Dr. Nabulsi is going to be giving hands-on exercises. Unfortunately, I'll be away. I wish I could be there, but it's a very nice session. So what to expect, exercises on creating developmental networks. I think, Iman, you attended that last year?
I attended that, and it was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, we had faculty then, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it makes you think a lot
Yeah,
about
it made me think a lot.
and about also refining your networks as you go along. You have to
And redefining and reassessing, and how can you be a better mentor, how can you be a better mentee? It really makes you reassess your status. Okay, thank you so much.